Okay, so in preparation for finishing our clay plate before we fire it the first time in the kiln, which is actually called a bisque fire, a few things that you need to understand about your plate at this point. If you can see, I'll bring it in a little bit closer here. The plate has actually dried, and you can see that as it dried, it began to shrink. And so it's about a 1/4 inch that clay plate shrunk compared to our commercial made mold underneath. Okay. So at this point, it's actually called bone dry. It's dried to become more white in color. It's actually kind of a really light gray color. But what we need to do at this point, when your projects are bone dry, we need to be very careful with them because there's no more water left in it. They're very fragile at this point. So again, we need to be very careful. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to just gently sandwich it between our hands. So I have my hand on the bottom. My hand goes over the top. And I'm actually going to flip this over. So 1, 2, 3. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to remove that commercial made plate and just set it off to the side. All right, so now we have a couple of things that we need to take care of before we fire it. So you may not be able to see in the video here. Ooh, we're getting a little out of focus. Sorry about that. It has kind of a rough edge, and so you have to remember that when the clay becomes fired and there's glaze on it, the glaze actually becomes like glass. So if you have any sharp, rough edges, that could actually cut you, all right? So what we're going to do is we're going to sand it with this little nifty thing here. It's actually just an item that you can find in the grocery store, in the dishwashing cleaner aisle. It's just a little kitchen scratch pad for hand washing dishes. But what we're going to do, I'm going to take this and I'm just going to gently sand that off of there. Any of those sharp edges. Okay, I'm sanding that away. And you can see that the sand is falling down onto my work surface. So the best idea is to actually be wearing a mask that covers your mouth and your nose so that this clay particles, you're not breathing this in. It's actually not very good for your lungs. So I'm going to continue working all the way around that outside of my plate. Just gently sanding off any of those rough edges. And that should not take you very long. And then I'm just going to double check the front. I've got one little funky spot right there, so I'm just going to sand that. Alright, now, the last step. I want to make sure that I identify this, that it's mine. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to use this tool. And I'm going to carve into that clay my name. And I would like for you to put your first and your last name on there. And again, I like to put the year on there that I made a piece of pottery, because this stuff will last for decades as long as you take care of it. So there we go, it's 2020. And then this is actually ready to be bisque fired, so first time firing.